Hey guys, welcome. My name is Dane. Just driving around, kind of in traffic right now. Thought I'd share a testimony, and this was during all the gang stalking stuff I was experiencing, but this was actually a time when I think I encountered an angel. The Bible talks about being careful how we treat people because we can entertain angels unaware, and I think this was one of those times just because of how it played out and the results of it. The Bible also says that angels are ministering spirits sent to help those who are inheriting salvation. So this was a time where I needed help, you know. I was on the street, I was going through all this demonic stuff, and the result of this is like it put me in contact with my family, because at this point I just basically like been so sick of the person that I was, right? Here, I got a message. So sick of the person that I was sick of you know, being a constant issue for my family, stress to my family and to friends and stuff. And basically that's how I ended up on the street. It wasn't because I didn't have anywhere to go or no one would help me. It's like I just knew that they couldn't help me. You know, there was no help for me but God. And so I kind of removed myself from my family. And a lot of that was pride too. Like, I just didn't want to hear it from people anymore. I wanted to just do my own thing and be left alone. And like a weird part of me was thinking that I was doing them a favor, but really that was selfish because I made my family super worried about me. Just not talking to them for a while, like they thought I was dead. You know, a lot of my friends thought I was dead. And so anyways, that's just a little backdrop on the story. But this one morning, so I'm staying on the street. I wake up and like, you know, I'm talking to some people that stayed out there too. And this dude's like, hey, they do this little breakfast deal at the church where they serve donuts, right? And it's like I hadn't eaten anything. I'm hungry. And so I'm like, let's go. So we go up there. And eventually I go with this dude, and for whatever reason, I get separated from him. And I end up just leaving because it was like full of people in there. I didn't know anyone. I ate a couple donuts and I'm on my merry way, right? So I'm sitting, I go out of the church and I go down the street a little bit, and like in this area, it's like a bunch of old buildings, right? There's an old church there, and then there's like other old buildings that aren't really like, there's no signs or anything. They're just, it's kind of weird. It's just older style. So there's like big porches and stuff like that leading up to these buildings. So I'm sitting on these steps going up to a building right next to the sidewalk, right? And so I'm sitting there and there's like no one around, right? And at this point I'm starting to get drug sick, right? I don't have any heroin or money, and this was a daily occurrence, right, on the street. So I was having to do crazy stuff, as you can imagine, to fuel my habits. And you know, I was just kind of at that point in my life where I wasn't in a good place, and I was honestly, I was sick of the way I was living. I really was. But I'm addicted to drugs, you know. It's like, that's like the catch-22 of every addict, is like, most of the time it's not fun. And it gets to a point where none of it's fun. Yet, it almost feels like it's too hard to stop. So, there's a lot of things involved with that. I'm not really talking about that today. But, I'm sitting there on the stoops. There's no one around, right? And I'm thinking like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't wanna do this anymore, you know. It's just like, I mean, that's part of me was saying that, but also the other part, like my addict side, is like, okay, how am I gonna get some money? So I'm like plotting on some things, and but just kind of like not looking forward to it, right? Not looking forward to the day at all. I'm contemplating on like all the stuff I've been experiencing, all the demonic stuff, and just like crazy experiences that I'm like having a hard time even wrapping my head around, right? As you guys can imagine, or as you guys know if you're going through it. So I'm just sitting there just kind of in my head, and there's no one around, like, and all of a sudden, like, I see or I hear like clicking of footsteps, you know, coming up the sidewalk, and I look to my left, and when I look, I see this lady, and she's staring directly out at me, right? And she's like, has such a bright countenance to her, you know, meaning like her face is just lit up with like welcomeness, like welcoming joy on her face, right? And it took me by complete surprise, because I'm used to people, like, literally I'm having situations where people are looking at me with like death glares, like literally people tell me they're gonna kill me, all these things, right? If you've seen some of my other videos, you know what I'm talking about. But I'm having all these super dark encounters with people, and like my head's in like a space I don't want to be in, right? Where I'm just like thinking about stuff I gotta do to get some drugs and to survive out there. And I'm like met with this just like welcoming smile and like kindness. And so she's walking towards me right on the sidewalk. I'm right next to the sidewalk, and she's staring at me the whole way. And at this point, like, I feel kind of bad, but this is like the only thing I could think was like this chick's trying to like hook up with me, you know? Because like it was just so direct, and like I don't know what was going on. It was crazy, you guys. It was like, now looking back, like it was like I was just drawn to the way that she looked, and she was lit up and welcoming, and it was like I was so used to just seeing darkness and stuff that I was like I couldn't stop like looking at her, right? But she's staring at me and just smiling. And so she walks by me, and then like, okay, sorry, let me back up. So she's like just like a middle-aged woman, right? And I'm not saying she's like super gorgeous, but she was like, you know, she was just like a decent looking lady, but it was what she was putting off was just like, there's something crazy about it, right? And so she walked past me smiling, and then like kind of staring at me, and when she walked past, she turned around and she just like waves her hands at me, right? She goes like this, and before I can even think, like I'm getting up to follow her, right? And so as I'm standing up and following her, she's walking backwards now, like doing this, right? And smiling, like not in a creepy way at all, just like a super friendly, like loving way. And so as I'm getting up to follow her, I don't even know why I'm following her, right? But like I said, the only thing that I can think of is like, I'm just confused. I'm like, okay, why is this lady acting like this towards me, and why is she like telling me to follow her? And she never said a word. She didn't ask me nothing. But like I said, I was in a tough spot right then, and I needed this at this time. Like I was just contemplating my life. It was this guy that got super deep. And so like I get up, I'm following her. I'm like, why am I following her? And then she's just kind of like smiling, waving me on, and then like she's taking a few steps, and then she's like looks back, and we go a couple buildings down, and I'm like 15 feet behind her, just, and she's like, one more time she turns back around at me and like gives me like a come on wave, you know? And she goes in these two wooden doors, these double doors. And so she goes in there, and the door's shut, and I'm coming up to the door, and I'm like, okay, why am I, like, I just have this like thought, like, why am I following her? Like, what is this building, you know? Because there's no signs outside. It's like an older building, and it's double wooden door, like, you know, those like rounded off at the top. big wooden doors. So it had a weird look to this building. And there's no signs, there's nothing. No, I can't see any lights coming out of it. But I go in there, and when I go in there, I see the lady. Okay, so sorry, let me back up. I open the door. There's a desk, like kind of like a secretary desk that's kind of in the pathway. And when I go in there, I see the lady that called me in there. She's already past the desk, so I don't hear her say a word to anyone, right? But I don't know, maybe she knew the people or whatever. But honestly, like, all this looking back, like, now I feel like this was an angel, because I never heard her say a word. And when I come in there, like, she's going to sit down in the back corner, and then she just smiles, and then my attention's on her, right? And so this lady at the welcoming desk was like, before I could even think about anything, she's just like, hey, come on in. What can we do for you? And it was so welcoming that I'm like, it was almost like I couldn't say no. Like, she's like, I said, this is what I said. I said, I'm like kind of stammering for words, right? Kind of like I am now. I'm like, so, yeah, what do you do here? And the lady, she just smiled and she said, we help people, and just smiled, right? And so before I could even like ask another question, she's like, honey, just grab some coffee, sign your name right here, and come talk to me. And I'm just kind of like, okay, you know? So I do that. I go sit and talk with her. And what's crazy is, like, I don't remember seeing the lady that called me in at all. Like, I never spoke to her, because I had so much going on, right? That I get the coffee, sign in, I'm trying to figure out what is this place, and why am I even here? Should I even sit down and talk? But it was like I was compelled to do so, right? So I go and sit down, and I'm talking to her, and she's asking me about, like, she's like, what are you doing out here? You know, what's going on with you? And for some reason, I was just super honest with this lady. I'm just like, you know, I'm out here. I'm not from out here. I'm using drugs. I can't stop using drugs. My life's a mess. Boom, boom, boom. I just started kind of like opening up to this lady that I didn't even know, right? And she's like, well, you don't seem like the scum of the earth. Like, what's up with your family, you know? And this was like a touchy spot with me, right? Because it's like I felt terrible, the things that I'd done to my family, you know? And just, like, I had barely even, my family didn't even know where I was at, right? Like I said. And it's like, so she starts talking about my family, and it's like, I just started, like, breaking down, you know? And it was just like a real moment, you know, where I'm just like, I'm coming to terms with everything. And it's just like, wow, you know? And so then I told her that I was staying at my aunt's in a city that was kind of near there. It was like a half hour away, right? From downtown. And what's crazy is, like, she's like, why don't you call your aunt? And so, like, I ended up getting on my Facebook on her phone, and I had a bunch of, like, messages from my aunt, like, where are you? Are you okay? Like, let us at least bring you food. Like, we're all worried about you and all this stuff. So I tried calling her. She didn't answer. I ended up leaving her a message, just telling her, like, look, this is where I've been staying. I gave her, like, the side streets. And I was like, I'm okay. I love you. Miss you guys. I tried calling, but no one answered. And so after that, the lady was like, she's like, oh, where does your aunt live? And I was like, she lives in Redmond. And she goes, I live there too. I'm going there in 2 hours. Do you want to go? And it was like an open door, right? Where I could get off the street. I could go get help. But it's like, now I'm faced with reality. I'm like, here I am getting drug sick. I'm like, you know, I had these good ideas still, right? I still, like, wanted to be around my ex-girlfriend, and, like, was like, no, I can't just go into treatment today. Like, I'm just thinking about all this, like, realistically, like what I'm gonna have to commit to. And so I ended up telling her no and just thanking her, and you know, I left from there not really thinking much of it, right? And it's only looking back that I realized how weird this was, because so I went back to my my camp, and like I said, I had told my aunt kind of where I was at, but I was off in like kind of like this they call it the jungle out there, and it was off the street, and it was like back in this area where there's like a bunch of crazy stuff going on, right? There's like a camp back there, and it's along this trail and kind of in the woods, but it's still in the city. It's like the only tree line that's out there. And so I had forgot about it, and basically a couple hours had passed, and one of my homies out there like came by my spot and was like, he's like, yo, he's like, I'm sorry, bro, but you got some fine ass cousins, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, your cousins are out here, you know, they're by the entrance out there. And I told him, don't come back here. And it was crazy how God always used this one dude, my buddy Omar, to like he was like always like a touch point between my family and me. For whatever reason, it just always worked out. Like whenever my family did come looking for me or whatever, he was the one to facilitate it. And I ended up getting him off the street later on too, but that's another story. So anyways, I'm confused, right? Because I'm like, fine cousins, who, like, I'm just like confused because I haven't talked to any of my cousins. And my aunt that I had told I was out there, she has 2 sons, right? So I'm like, okay, it's not them. So I'm confused. And I end up going out there, and turns out it's my uncle's daughter, right? And she happened to be in Seattle, and my other aunt knew it and called her and said, hey, can you run by this place and see if Dane's around there, right? Like, he's living on the street, all this stuff. And so basically, like, I went with my cousin. Like, she's like trying to convince me to, you know, go to treatment and stuff, and I'm just like not really hearing it, right? And so the point of all this is, like, it got me to get back in touch with my family. And this was like the beginning process of me like getting off the street, because then my family started coming out there and looking for me, right? And what kind of broke me down too was, you know, I was moving around, right? I'm on that place that I was staying, and then how I said something about my ex-girlfriend. She was in another part of the city, running around doing her thing, and so I would go out there, right? And so like when I would come back from being out there for a day or two, come back to you know, go make some money and try to make some moves, you know, I'd have people telling me, hey, your family was here, dude, like, and like I was just like brushing it off, like, because I'm like, I don't know why they're like, they won't leave me alone. And it's like that mindset is just so crazy to me now, because it's like, and this is what made me realize how I was acting. This dude that stayed out there was like, he's like, man, he's like, I wish I had someone come out here and look for me, like your family comes out here and looks for you. And I'm just like, I realized at that moment, I was like, dude, I'm so lucky to still have a family that cares about me, you know, despite all the stuff I've done. And so, yeah, eventually, like, some things progressed, and I'll tell the story. It got so incredibly dark out there and demonic that I finally was like, I submitted to God, and I got up off the street. But it was from this encounter, this, like, you know, I think it was an angel that got me back in touch with my family, and just like God started moving on my behalf, you know. And I had to go through what I had to go through to realize what I had, you know? I had to lose everything to realize like what was important. And there's something about it when you're in complete darkness, like the gospel and the things that are pure, they are so much more appealing, right? Because it's like a candle in a dark room. It sends off a lot of light. So that's kind of how it was for me. Like, it had to get super dark around me to realize like I wanted nothing to do with that stuff. But yeah, that's just a story, you know, that's on a little more on like the positive side. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you've ever had a similar experience, let me know. I'm just pulling up to my house now, so I'll see you on the next one.